Last thing my ugly ass needs is more backlighting. I can tell you, I got it from the side here. That's good enough. I don't have any lights directly in front of me, as you've no doubt noticed. Otherwise, y'all think I was pretty, and it can't be having that. We just can't be having that. So, what we've got on tap today is work by Historia Civilis. He's a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. Historia Civilis has done some of the best, like, I don't want to call it amateur history because I don't know the guy's personal professional background, but he did a whole couple of years just breaking down how the Romans, like the Roman calendar worked, how the Roman political system worked, the history of it, the year of the 5 emperors or whatever it was, the crisis of the 3rd century, all of this really cool shit that is, if you're a nerd like me, lots of fun. So Historia Civilis is someone I trust as a decent source. He always sources his work. And then after we go through the history of work and kind of why what we do today is a little bit bullshit, I was waiting to see if we could get a couple people in here to start. Also, every sub means I will have to do 5 reps with these bad boys. I'm only picking up the one right now because I'm a bitch. But if you want to torture me, go ahead and drop a sub. I should have made it just 1 rep, but why not? Why not? I'm a big, strong, growing boy. I'm not a growing boy, but yeah, I fucking deal with it. So one of capitalism's most durable myths is that it has reduced human toil. Let's begin. I don't know who that is. The Overworked American, The Unexpected Decline of Leisure, 1991.
We work too much. This is a pretty recent phenomenon, and so this fact makes us unusual historically. It puts us out of step with our ancestors. It puts us out of step with nature. For reasons that will become obvious, anthropologists in the 20th century became very interested in the evolution of work. And so to answer some of their...
So, yeah, he's not wrong. We do work too much. Like, it's not the 40-hour week that's the issue, so much as it is the relentless nature of it all. Right? You got to keep working. Why? Just to cover the bills? Just to stay in that, just to stay with your head barely above water? That can't be the only reason. Oh, we'll get a better job. Even then, why does any job not pay you enough to be able to rent an apartment? Shouldn't there be cheap enough apartments that, look, I don't mind if I got to live in a piece of shit, terrible place. What's that? It got bugs? All right, I can deal with that. I'm not an exterminator, but I can get traps and make sure it's nice and clean and do what I can. And mitigate that problem significantly. So why do I gotta pay? In my rent, there's worked into the price of it. The person they pay to come out here and spray for bugs once a month in the summer. They just come and spray around the base of the building and fuck off, and that's all they do. And hey, I don't blame the person who's spraying for bugs, man. That's their job. But why did I have to pay for that when I could have just, not been a dirty piece of shit and solve the problem myself? What's that? You got rats? Get some cats. Fucking problem solved. The cats will win. There's a reason we domesticated cats. It's more like cats domesticated themselves when they realized we were just hoarding whole big bunches of grain. And then when we hoarded bunches of grain, all those mice and rodents would run towards our grain, and the cats would go, wait a second, why is all the mice going there? And then they followed the mice, killed the mice. One day, some farmer opened up his little silo and went, there's like 30 dead rats in here. And there was a very happy-looking cat over in the corner, and he went, you are cool, you can stay, kitty cat. And boom, Since then, we've had cats. That's part of the reason the Egyptians found them magical or whatever the fuck.
Questions.
They can protect your
looked
crops
back to Stone
from
Age
spoilage.
societies. What they discovered surprised them. They found that while there were unique cultural variations all over the world, virtually all Stone Age people liked to work an average of 4 to 6 hours per day. They also found that most Stone Age people liked to work in bursts, with one fast day followed by one slow day. Usually
sure.
something like 8 hours of work, then 2 hours of work.
I'm
Eight,
for this.
Then 2.
Two.
Fast, slow.
Two.
Fast, slow.
Two.
These anthropologists found another
Hey.
thing. Pre-capitalist and pre-industrial societies all had their own ways of measuring chunks of time. Some would measure by how long it took to accomplish a
appreciate you being
specific
here.
task,
Thank you,
or
Rock,
cook a
Jody,
specific meal,
Forest Spirit.
or
Hey.
walk a specific
Forest Spirit. Good to see you.
distance. But the odd thing is that when you compare all of these little markers that were used by different cultures, they were all somewhere in the ballpark of 30 minutes. It seems that in a world without clocks, or phones, or sundials, measuring the day in 30-minute chunks just feels good and natural to humans. Very few societies ever felt the need to break the day into smaller chunks than that. It's hard to go much deeper than that from archaeological evidence alone. But there are other pre-capitalist and pre-industrial societies that we can look back to help us. There are excellent surviving records from medieval Europe that delve into this issue, so let's start there.
Okay, so we're gonna go check. I was saying this. I've been saying this to my friends. Medieval peasants had more freedom than we did. Than we do. We're over here pretending that, this, that, and the other. It's not. I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Before I learned about the hard-headed veteran's ballistic helmet, I thought that such things were going to be something
But let's see. Let's see what he's on about. Because I swear medieval peasants were freer than
For
us.
virtually
What, they gotta gather fucking grain? They gotta work the fields? Well, you can't work the field in the winter. They got all winter off.
all of human
When's the last time you
history,
got an entire
most
winter
work
off?
has been
I'll wait.
agricultural work. This was also true of medieval Europe. So when thinking about
Exactly.
medieval workers, we shouldn't be
Exactly,
thinking
guys.
about cities. We should be
Yeah.
thinking about workers in fields. For the first hour or so of the medieval workday, people would just trickle in at their own pace. The employer was usually expected to provide some food to the workers. So for this time, people usually had a chat and a bite to eat, but otherwise did nothing. As you can imagine, convincing people to get up and start their work for the day was often quite difficult.
Yo,
Employers
Jody.
complained about it all the time.
Nobody wants to work anymore.
After a couple of hours in the
Employers
field,
always
there would
complain about
usually
that.
be a mid-morning break that could range from 30 to 60 minutes, where
Yep.
workers would have another bite to eat. When the sun was high in the sky and the day was starting to get hot, work would stop again for an extended period of time. Something like 2, maybe even
This is why
3
you still
hours.
see in I think it's in Spain. They still have the midday siesta, where it's like if you're trying to go. I haven't been to Spain myself, but I had a friend in high school who did a chance to visit. Well, a high school friend of mine who visited during college, and we got to chatting, and she talked about how when she went to the store, she went to go to a CVS to get something. And she was there at 12:30. The motherfucker was closed. So we're closed until 2. They had a little note on the door. Hey man, siesta, fuck off. Break time. Hey, nobody here. All the lights were off, everything. I bet that's where this comes from.
Hours, depending on how hot it was that day.
Well, siesta is where that comes. This is where the siesta comes from. I was talking backwards, but I knew what I meant.
This period would begin with a larger
guys.
midday meal that
Don't
would
mind
be
that I'm
recognizable
incoherent.
to us as lunch,
It's not the
and
point.
was followed up by, this is not a joke, nap time. In medieval Europe, siestas weren't just a Spanish thing, they were an everywhere thing. After returning to work, refreshed and rejuvenated, workers would intensify the pace of their work in an effort to finish everything up for the day. If they were done by the mid-afternoon, they could go home. If they weren't, they would break for another 30 to 60 minutes, with more food provided, before going back in for one last sprint. Most of the time, workers didn't have to stay much later than this. But if it was harvest season and people were working late, there would often be a larger break in the evening with a larger meal provided by the employer. But this was rare. Workers might be in the field for like 8 hours a day, but when you account for all of the breaks, they would only be working for 4 to 6 of those hours. During the busiest times of year, they might be in the fields for like 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
But with the breaks...
But also, like, during harvest, like, everybody understands, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with a day of hard work, with a couple weeks of hard work. Nothing wrong with it at all. Feels good. It really does. You ever get a good, productive day in? Oh, you feel like a fucking superhero. But, you know, we're doing these every single day of our entire working life just to fall a little bit more behind. Doesn't seem worth it.
It would only be working for 7 to 9 of those hours. Notice the numbers we're playing with here. Stone Age peoples all over the world and agricultural workers in medieval Europe both liked to work 4 to 6 hours a day, even though each group had no knowledge or memory of each other. It seems that this is just a natural pattern that humans like. Medieval workers would work longer during the harvest or during a crisis, but they didn't like to, and that's the point. Also notice the length of these breaks. Medieval workers measured the days in 30-minute chunks, just like their Stone Age ancestors. What else sticks out in the medieval workday? Notice how the workers were constantly eating. This was one of the perks of being a day laborer. Food was a worker's biggest expense, and so part of their compensation was that their employer would take care of the food for that day. It would be like if part of your compensation was that your boss paid your rent. It relieved.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if your boss paid your rent? Oh,
a massive
that ain't never gonna
financial
happen.
burden.
Could you fucking imagine?
One other thing to note was that work was generally understood to be a thing that happened during the...
Let me know down in the comments. Let me know in chat. What do you think? Should our workers pay... Should our employers pay our rent? I think they should.
Day. And although there wasn't an exact science to this, a workday
they
was
would actually have money to consume all these things they want us to be consuming. Maybe people will be buying new cars instead of letting new cars rot on the lot like we're doing right now.
Broadly understood to be half of daylight hours. If there was an urgent need for people to literally work from sunrise to sunset, there was kind of a gentleman's agreement that this would count as 2 days of labor. What can we take away from all this? Work used to be a lot more informal and a lot more casual. Labor and leisure used to be intermingled. One was expected to relax and even nap on the job. Work was a part of a worker's life. Kicking back and passing the time wasn't just something workers did at home, it was equally something they did at work. Unless
like work is something we can't avoid, so why do we have to make it miserable? Our lives aren't supposed to be miserable. You're not here that long. Why are you here stressing yourself into an early grave? Well, they think that big nap's going to be worth it? Probably not. I mean, I'm a little weird, but I have been tending to lean towards the opinion that as soon as you go to the other side, you're right back here again. You're just back running the same damn rat race again and again and again and again because it all feels too familiar.
There was some sort of unusual crisis.
Let me know what y'all
Workers were not expected to experience great stress while working.
Not supposed to be stressful. Well, work is stressful now. Even shit paid work, people are yelling at you and you're like, what the fuck are we yelling about? What is this shit? I got anything left in here? I think I do.
We are really tailored to meet a very specific population, adolescents and young adults who are really struggling with primarily mood disorders.
Our mental health program is for...
The week always began at a leisurely pace. Monday and Tuesday are described as days with a holiday spirit. Employers write of their difficulty in getting people to even show up. Thursday and Friday are just...
Monday is the most called off if you're an employer and you've got like a team of people to manage, you will be shorthanded on Monday 8 times out of 10, probably more.
Described as fast days. Mondays and Tuesdays were slow, Thursdays and Fridays were fast.
There it is
An
again.
echo of the Stone Age pattern of working.
Wednesday's right in the middle.
Fast,
'Cause
slow.
Let's be real. Wednesday always sucks. There's no hope coming on the horizon, and all the fun of the weekend is gone. So that middle day is just you just got to do it. It's always been there. That's okay. Wednesdays can suck. I mean, hell, our days of the week in English are still named after the Norse gods. Like, well, I say Norse gods, but what I might mean more so is the Germanic names, because there was a Germanic god called Woden. And we don't have a lot of details on Woden, but name pretty much matches Odin. So we got Woden's Day, Odin's Day, Wednesday, Thursday, Thursday, Frigsdag. Frigg, or Freya. If you played God of War, you know exactly who all these 3 people are. I can't remember Monday and Tuesday. I can't remember. But let's be real, those days are cursed anyway, so fuck them. Who cares who they're named after?
Slow. Saturday was payday, and so it functioned as a hurry up and finish everything so that we can get the hell out of here day. It seems that under normal circumstances, Saturday was kind of a half day, although during busy seasons it could easily turn into another fast day, like Thursday and Friday. After the week's work was
the harvest
done
is the
and
harvest.
everybody
Hey, I
got
appreciate
paid,
the alert,
workers
Goose.
got a full day off on Sunday.
We're just recording for YouTube here.
But by the 16th and 17th centuries,
Good to see
a
you.
new custom invented by workers
Congratulations.
disrupted
You
this
seem to be
pattern.
you
They
seem to be
called
popping
it
off.
Saint Monday. Saint
put in that
Monday
work,
was
brother. You
kind of
deserve it.
an unofficial holiday where absenteeism was permitted and even expected on the first day of the work week.
What? What? Absenteeism was permitted? Fuck, dude. I'll get myself written up for that shit.
People were still
If this was still the way things were, I'd still be working in the data center. I'd be having a grand old time. I don't even think I'd be streaming.
flush with cash from last Saturday, and Monday was a slow day anyways, so it just organically became a thing that workers just didn't show up. Employers learned to tolerate it, and workers gleefully
Employers learned to tolerate it. You hear that? We got to just make the employers learn to tolerate not treating us like dog shit.
looked forward to it. Countless labor actions in early modern Europe can be traced back to some dumbass boss with something to prove, trying to crack down on their beloved St. Monday. This was the real origin of the 2-day weekend. It didn't come from government. It came from workers. They just did it themselves. And it came centuries before any legislature got
Nothing.
around to making it official.
There's a great saying around me, and I'm sure some other people know it, but the circles I run in like to say that politics is downstream of culture. So once the people decide something, the politicians kind of have no choice but to just go ahead with it. Like, they don't have as much power as we think they do. Seriously, who's stopping you from walking out your door right now? Nobody. Only thing stopping me is I'm streaming. I got the stream
But
stream.
leaving aside St.
The
Monday,
stream.
it's striking how different the mentality of medieval workers was from the mentality of workers today. Or let's flip that around. It's striking how different our mentality is today from that of our ancestors, going back hundreds, even thousands of years. Here's one specific example of that difference. Whenever medieval workers could afford to stop working,
What do y'all think he's going to say? Whenever medieval workers could afford to stop working? Oh, my monitor
They
is
did.
gnarly. Hold on.
medieval
Sorry.
Europe was not a culture in which people saved a lot of money. This isn't because they were primitive or selfish or anything like that. There just wasn't that much for poor people to spend their money on. Food, housing, clothing, that was pretty much it.
Beer! Right? And if you got beer money for the next 6 months, why the fuck would you go to work? No, seriously, if you got beer money for the next 6 months, and you got food, right? Like let's say you got some pigs, you got some chickens, so the chickens are laying eggs, and certain chickens are getting a little older. Some of those eggs hatch, some of those eggs don't. You can eat the eggs that don't. People who raise chickens they know which hens are brooding and which hens are actually gonna, like, so boom, you can just constantly keep that rolling, and then just go shit-faced. Just go get shit-faced. Collect some eggs in the morning, feed your pigs, go get shit-faced, and come back. All you would need is pet food, basically, and beer money.
If a worker was all set in those 3 categories, there honestly wasn't that much else available to them. This led to a phenomenon in medieval Europe, where after all of a worker's basic needs were met, the more they earned, the less they worked. To put it another way, medieval workers liked to spend most of their discretionary income on leisure. This isn't such a strange phenomenon. If you survey people today and offer them a choice between more money and more time off, most people would take more time off.
I'd take the time off.
It's just that under our system, people are never offered that choice.
Exactly.
Or when they try to exercise that
force
choice
that
for
choice on
themselves,
myself.
they are either professionally punished or fired. In medieval Europe, people could make that choice for themselves. And whenever possible, workers worked less.
Still feel so free in wherever it is you're living in these Western democracies. We so-called Western, so-called democracies. I don't even get where we... Like, I get where we get the names, but, like, come on.
A lot
They're
less.
silly. They're mostly silly.
Do you like saving money? Don't answer that. It's a rhetorical question. Who doesn't like saving money?
Silly? All right,
Yeah, that's
I gotta be ready, because this is where I'm gonna cut
Did
the
you know that
YouTube
Mint
video,
Mobile
so I
is
gotta,
just $15
gotta
a
work on
month for
continuity
premium
here. Let me get
wireless?
my...
I'm not sure if that's a rhetorical
done.
question,
Okay,
but I also don't know how.
Silly the way we work so much.
There were 3 major holiday
don't get
periods
anything for
where
it.
workers
holidays.
routinely took a big chunk
I
of
like
time
holidays.
off.
Let's see.
Easter, Midsummer, and
Midsummer,
Christmas.
Christmas.
Or
Okay, so Easter. Okay, this is still when we try and take time off. Well, we get Thanksgiving in the States. We kind of pack our stuff around that because it's close to Christmas anyway. And people love taking those midsummer beach vacations if you can afford them. I think that's less and less people as time goes on.
for the uninitiated, March or April, late June, and late December. I would note that of the 3, only the December holiday period made it into the modern era intact.
Yeah.
Things really slowed down in the winter. Days
Yeah,
were
like-
short, and the work was short.
This is what I was saying, right? Like in the winter, you can't grow anything. So what's the point of, all these agricultural workers? You can't really do shit. What you do? Drink beer to stay warm. Fuck it.
Because of this, a tradition evolved.
Again, sorry about the
called
audio
winter
quality. I had to have my
wages,
window open. It
where
was like 88
workers
in
were
here
paid
when I woke
half
up.
a day's wage for half a day's work. We're talking about a 4-hour workday at the very most. If you add in all the breaks, this would be maybe 2 to 3 hours of actual work.
I doubt they would take as many
Winter
breaks that day.
wages were usually
days.
done for the months of December and January. And during this time, people took as much time off as they could afford. Workers spent their extra time on indoor labor that might not generate a profit. Home repairs, building new furniture, patching up or making new clothing. These were jobs best saved for the slow winter months.
Too bad almost none of us know how to do any of that shit anymore. I wish I could make furniture. That would be fun. It'd kind of be fun to be a carpenter. The smell of sawdust. I like that shit.
When you total up the estimated number of days worked by medieval farm laborers, things become quite stark.
This is...
Researchers have found that Spanish farm laborers...
What do you think? What do you think the average days are? Let me know. Let me know what you think. We're going to pause it here. We're going to let you guys guess. I'm going to continue the video in like 10, 20 seconds. Days not working, average per year, back in the medieval times. What do you think it was? All right, all your guesses in? Here we go.
did not work for 42% of days in a year. In France, the number was more like 49%. The English usually worked more, but this wasn't because they were naturally more industrious. It's because they were historically more exploited by
Well, that and their agricultural capacity is not the same as Spain and France. Spain and France are slightly warmer Yes, England's very wet, but it's also very rocky. You can't grow a whole lot there. So I get why that would be the case. You know, like you were saying earlier, in Stone Age societies, there's a variation. There's cultural variations. There's societal variations. He's saying it's just because they're exploited. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I'm not a socialist, but this shit's for the birds.
Their
Whatever we're doing now,
aristocracy.
it ain't
When there was a
capitalism,
labor
'cause
shortage in the 14th
capitalism requires
century,
freedom.
English laborers immediately used their clout to create more time off for themselves. For a time, English workers enjoyed 51% of days free from work. The funny thing about these numbers, 42%, 49%, 51%, is that once again, they echo how people worked in Stone Age societies. Almost
All right.
every other day off. Fast, slow. Fast,
Here it is.
slow.
There it is again.
Labor historian E.P.
Sorry if the
Thompson
ice is messing with the
describes
sound.
this work pattern as a natural human rhythm.
I think
and
he's right.
a common preference in people across different regions, different cultures,
I think
and
he's
different times.
actually very correct about that.
When your kid is hurting and there's nothing you can do about it.
Like I think, like y'all have felt this, right? Like you get to work in the morning, you're real busybody. Get as much done as you can. Really start chugging. Then as soon as you take your break, you're just sort of like, man, whatever. Let's coast to the end of the day. I think that's the echoes of this rhythm. And if we're not going to do what's natural for us, like what are we becoming? It's almost like we're trying to be made into something we aren't.
For a point of comparison, consider a modern
And
work.
I will always stand on the lyric from the Van Zant song "Help Somebody," where he's talking about his grandmother, and she would always say, "It's better to be hated for who you are than be loved for who you're not." And I really vibe with that.
Worker working 5 days a week. In a calendar year, that worker has 28% of days off. Add in the 10 or so public holidays that most countries have, and that worker now has 31% of days off. Add in 2
Hey.
weeks of vacation, and that worker now has 34% of days off. Assuming
Look at that. We're still working harder than medieval peasants. Even at the hardest, we're still working harder than medieval peasants, guys. This ain't right. This ain't right.
instead that they get 6 weeks of vacation, and that worker has 39% of days off.
Still not even touching what the Spanish and French had.
In order for a modern worker to even begin to rival the amount of time off enjoyed by a medieval French farm laborer, that modern worker would need to be provided with 3.5 months of vacation.
Okay, that's not rivaling, that's surpassing, but still, 3 months. You would need 3 months of vacation to have that. And don't they have that in France? I believe still to this day in France, you get like 2 months of vacation, and most people just take it in the summer.
Per year, plus weekends, plus public holidays. Medieval workers were operating on a level so far beyond us that it's difficult to even dream that big.
Yeah. So I say take 100% until they realize.
Up until the modern era,
Yes, I'm calling for a
workers were
general
paid by
strike.
the day. The length of the workday could fluctuate throughout the year, but even during the busiest periods, workers might be in the fields for 12 hours at most. But as I've said, if you take into account all of the breaks and meal times and nap times, that might translate into 8 hours of actual work. And that
Sounds
was
familiar.
on the busy end of the spectrum. At other times, a shortened workday would often lead to less than 4 hours of actual work.
Yup.
That all began to change with the proliferation of mechanical clocks.
Now, see, I understand that you can't shut down the Taco Bell half of all days or what have you. I get that. I get to an extent where their perspective is coming from. But here you go. Hire twice as many people. Give people more time off. Pay them more. Oh, I'm sorry. Is the company not solvent? Well, that's a bad business. If they're saying we can't afford to hire more workers, but then all of your workers are overworked, I have I have a startling suspicion that what you have there is a badly run business, not a labor problem where everybody's just too lazy.
Cities and towns began building clock towers in their town squares in the late 14th and early 15th.
Pay attention to this. People started building clock towers. They started building clock towers. Yeah, everybody was happy about it. But remember the people who tell you they want deregulation?
18th centuries. And before too long, churches, and yes, even some private businesses, were inspired to have mechanical clocks of their own.
Because before that, churches just used bells.
Arguably, the
It was good
most
enough.
important clock ever built was installed at the Amsterdam Stock Exchange in 1611. The Netherlands were at the epicenter of this new capitalism fad that was sweeping Europe, and their shiny new stock exchange reflected that. Local, Dutch, and their
the fuck?
shiny new stock exchange.
What are these dudes doing on the roof? This guy's just like praising the clock. This dude's on something. He's on that good shit. He gotta be careful, man. He gonna take a tumble. These guys, I don't know, getting magic lessons from the wizard here? What the fuck? Dude, why don't we wear cool hats anymore, man? Now all we got is fucking like baseball caps and shit. We should bring cool hats back.
Exchange reflected that.
Bring back cool
Local
hats.
Dutch governments tried to curb the capitalist fervor taking over their country by restricting stock trading to certain times of day, 2 hours in the summer and 30 minutes in the winter. Wait a second. See that?
We're gonna go back. I'm sorry, y'all. I missed that. Wait,
taking
what?
over their country by restricting stock trading to certain times of day.
They restricted. Oh, so the people were sick of these financial sorts taking over their. Okay, we're gonna watch
The Netherlands were at the epicenter
Dude
of
tripping.
this new capitalism fad
This
that was
magic
sweeping
lessons with the
Europe,
wizard here.
and their shiny new stock exchange reflected that.
What's happening?
Local Dutch governments
Local
tried
Dutch governments.
to curb the capitalist
Oh,
fervor
okay,
taking
so-
over their country by restricting.
No doubt. Again, the governments in response to pressure from people. Governments don't do anything on their own, right? People got to show up and go, "What the fuck, man?" Until a government employee does something. I mean, come on. That's just how it works. That's how it's always worked. That's how it's supposed to work, right? You don't want them making extra rules nobody asked for.
Restricting stock trading to certain times of day, 2 hours in the summer and 30 minutes in the winter.
Huh?
Wait a second.
That looks
See
familiar.
that? Even as late
Fast,
as
slow.
1611,
Fast,
Dutch
slow.
stock traders
Fast,
had their
slow.
own version of
Huh.
winter wages. It didn't even necessarily make sense for their job. It was just in the culture that that's what people did in the winter. Anyways, the Dutch wanted to issue hefty fines to any traders who violated these restrictions. So the stock exchange commissioned a giant state-of-the-art clock. This idea quickly proliferated to every stock exchange in Europe. And with this, the clock escaped the public realm of town squares and entered the private realm of business. All of a sudden, capitalists wanted to prove how much of a capitalist they were by having their place of business install a mechanical clock, just like their local stock exchange. Clock mania had begun.
How's it going? We're getting there.
Oh, hey, Star
I
Wars
spoke to
show.
my friend at 500.
The shows are better.
She thinks they'll finish
Than the
inspecting
movies.
up there today. Where they go next should tell us what direction they're moving, but
How many are there?
on the ground, she counted about 40. We don't know what they have in the air.
What if they come this way?
Look, they need the grain. They know we need help, and they know everyone isn't legal. How hard they look, what they do. It's been 10 years since the last audit. Nobody's happy. Talia thinks they'll let us slide.
We can't count on that.
What if they ask where we came from?
I wouldn't mention Ferrix.
What if we stay ahead of them?
I'd be careful. I caught someone running at 500. I'll find out what I can.
Okay. So now everybody has clocks. All right. Oh, I did not recognize
Textile
what that
mills
map was, so
were the
fully
first
zoomed out.
businesses utterly transformed by the clock. Some brain genius
Yeah, I know. Call me a dumb American. It is what it is.
had the idea to connect the mechanical clock to a bell, which would signal the beginning and the end of the workday. This was a profound cultural shift, and workers really struggled to make sense of it. Understandably. under the old system. And by
'Cause that's
the
what
old
you do for
system,
cattle.
I mean
You know, when it's time to feed your livestock, you let them know. My grandpa used to feed the deer around his house. He would take a big old, like, 5-gallon bucket of corn kernels, and he'd sprinkle them on the ground in little piles. And then when he was done, he'd bang on the bottom of the 5-gallon drum, and you'd see every single one of them deer pop their head out of the trees and start walking down. Like, it was really cool. Because I once got to feed one straight out of my hand. I was scared as shit. He's like, oh, come on, quit being a baby. This mountain man, you know, fucking West Virginia, backwoods redneck. And so I stuck out my hand, and the deer's licking my hand trying to get all these corn kernels off. I'm like, do they bite? He's like, they only got but one set of teeth. Even if they bite you, it don't hurt. I'm like, oh, okay. It was awesome. And yeah, like that's what your clock-in is really about. Treating you like a cattle. You're not a person to an employer. You're not. You are a asset. Like a blender or a kitchen knife. You're a replaceable cog in a machine that has long since thrown you overboard, and your well-being is not part of the equation. The only person that's going to stand up for you is you. And faster you learn that, the better off we'll all be.
been working for all of human history. Workers were hired by the day and measured the day in 30-minute chunks. They began and ended their workday accordingly within a broad 30-minute window. Now, workers were hired by the hour and measured the day in 60-second chunks. This was new, and it was confusing.
Yeah.
Many workers responded to the workday bell by doing the most logical thing under the circumstances. They just ignored it. It had never mattered before at precisely what minute one began or ended their work. So why should it matter now?
Wait till you see this.
But the capitalists cared. In fact, they would develop an unhealthy obsession with the clock.
Still have that unhealthy obsession.
For too long, the capitalists were able to convince city governments to get involved, who began issuing fines to workers who were late for the workday bell. Let me say this again. If a worker who worked for a private business was 1 minute late for work, the local government would...
Remember, these are the people who want deregulation. These are the people who want to tell you the government needs to get out of business. Oh, stop telling me how to run my business. OSHA. They were the first people to use the government against their workers. Don't believe them. Don't believe them for a second.
Fine them
At
as
least I
much
don't
as an
believe them for
entire
a second.
day's
What do y'all
pay.
think?
This kind of thing had never...
Find them an entire day's pay? An entire day's pay for being as little as a minute late. Just as soon as you're late, you would get fined with a ticket. Yeah, we don't do that anymore, but... These are the same sort of people. The business owners that want to treat you like extraction mechanisms. That's what you are. You are there to make them money. You're not there to make yourself money. No. You're there to make them money. Now, I understand you can't be paid what you're worth, because if I make a company $100 an hour and they pay me $100 an hour, there's no money left to pay the fucking rent. I get it. From that perspective, I get it. But if this is where it came from, and I trust Historius Civilis' sources, he's well sourced. I don't agree with him on everything. I don't agree with him on a lot of things when it comes to these more puffy opinion pieces. But he's having the conversation we needed to have 50 fucking years ago. And I think we all would be better served if we paid attention to this and really got after it.
Contract between bosses and workers. The capitalists just invented this new rule out of whole cloth, and they did it by joining hands with local governments across Europe. Industrial capitalism and the heavy hand of government. Friends since the very beginning. The owners of the textile mills wanted to change the culture of work, and they did. But they did it by basically beating their workers into submission.
Why can't we beat back?
As capitalism and later industrialization swept across Europe, It brought
Not
with
advocating
it
for
an
nothing, but-
oppressive, even authoritarian relationship between workers and owners. Shortly after the introduction of the clock, the capitalist class killed the customary afternoon nap that had been part of the workday for as long as people could remember. Absolutely tragic. They also stopped providing food to the workers, which dumped an extra financial burden onto the working class.
Again?
Mealtimes, which up until now had been long and informal and subsidized by the employer, were shortened and regulated down to the minute.
Yeah, you ever had a boss tell you you don't get a 30-minute break? I have. And in a state where 30-minute breaks were mandatory. Hell, I've had in New York when I first started working, if you worked 12 hours in a day, you would get 2 30-minute breaks. My last job in New York, before I moved to Virginia, for a better job that I honestly hated more. Be careful, grass ain't always greener. The last job I had in New York, I would work 12-hour days and get 15 minutes. I wouldn't even get a formal, break most of the time. You'd have to, twist the arm of the employer, so to speak. You'd be like, hey, man, look, I've been here since 8 o'clock in the morning. It's 4 p.m. I'm taking the 30 minutes. Yeah, but right now is a bad time. Yeah, well, you could have done it 2 hours ago when I first asked you, when we were slow, but you didn't want to. Now, too bad. And they'd be like, well, you need to clock out for it. But, I have the card that will allow you to clock out for it. All right, well, then clock me out for it. I'm not doing it. Now, I will go sit in the back. If you're going to pay me for it, you're going to pay me for it. But, no. Been on my feet since 8 a.m. I'm taking 30 minutes. God damn it. And then you get written up for it. You're not free. I don't know who keeps telling us we're free, but they're lying. They are 110% lying.
Workday was just squeezed and squeezed until all of the air and all of the culture and all of the joy was taken out of it. But soon, even having a maximally productive workday wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Workers quickly figured out that they could not trust the company clock. Many bosses liked to fiddle with the time so that the workday started a little bit too early and ended a little bit too late. One trick that bosses liked to pull with early company clocks was to rig them to the production line so that if there was any sort of technological problem, as there often was, then the clock would stop. Later generations of company clocks had mechanisms built into them that caused them to periodically pause during the workday, accumulating minutes, only to suddenly jump forward to the real time during breaks. It's funny, because the capitalists were the ones that invented this idea that the clock must reign supreme. They were the ones who had the government fine people if they were 1 minute late for work. They were the ones who unilaterally imposed this new social contract on workers, and then they were the ones to immediately break this new social contract. Why? No reason, really, just for a few extra bucks.
Yeah.
Like I said, workers caught on pretty quickly, but when workers talked with other workers about how the company clock was inaccurate, it became standard practice within the textile industry to fire them on the spot. Fast forward 200 years. When pocket watches became common, workers did the sensible thing and brought them to work. Why wouldn't they? The capitalists had established long ago that being even 1 minute late for work was a mortal sin. Surely pocket watches would enable workers to be supernaturally punctual. This was exactly what the bosses wanted, right?
Right?
But that's not how it went.
Because they'll realize that the clock is a fucking load of bullshit.
For the first
Do you
time,
ever feel like your paycheck's a little light? Work 45 hours, it says 38. I go, wait a minute.
ever, workers with pocket watches had physical proof that their bosses were tampering with the clocks. This practice was so egregious and so morally wrong that it became a political scandal, particularly in Britain, with genuine calls for regulation and reform.
When?
The capitalists responded to this scandal by, well, what do you think they
Banning pocket watches.
did? Imagine, you own a factory, you find out your middle managers are messing with the company clock. Word gets out, there are angry newspaper columns, there are debates in parliament, there's the threat of legislation coming down on your head, there is a full-blown political scandal. What do you do? If you said, ban pocket watches from factories, search workers before they enter the building, and fire anybody who complains about it, then congratulations, you're a fascist. And yeah, that's exactly what the capitalists did.
I knew what they would do.
By now, it should be clear that the mechanical clock was a tool used by the industrialists to subjugate and exploit their workers.
I mean, yeah, anything can be used to do that. The clock isn't necessarily just for subjugating people. It's useful for scheduling things. But, yeah, why do you think there are some people who just can't be on time no matter what? I'm telling you, it's because they've been on this ride before. They've been here, like I was saying earlier. I really do think you just sort of go for this ride again and again and again. There's no point working yourself into the grave because you'll just come back to work yourself into the grave again.
It was never about productivity or efficiency, because they proved over hundreds of years that they would rather fire a productive worker than run an accurate company clock. That was where their priorities were.
Okay,
it was never really about profits, was it? It was about power.
Well, the power the profit brings. So maybe it was a little bit of both. Maybe it was a little bit of both there. Calm down, Historia. Actually, no, don't calm down. Get angrier. I don't like this guy because I don't like socialism because it hasn't worked. The reason any time a socialist government comes into power, there's mass graves.
Century
really
Canadian socialist George Woodcock, who wrote at length about what he called the tyranny of the clock, wrote the following. Because without some means of exact timekeeping, industrial capitalism could never have developed and could not continue to exploit their workers. The clock represents...
It could have developed, but without the clock, it wouldn't be able to continue to exploit its workers. Okay, maybe. I mean, there's some whataboutisms here. Because without some means of exact timekeeping, industrial capitalism could never have developed. No, it could have. It just would have been less productive, which is okay.
An element of mechanical tyranny in the lives of modern men, more potent than any other exploiter or any other machine.
What do you think they want to do with smartphones? Why do you think they trying to stop people from spreading information that they don't deem appropriate?
All of the trends that began with the mechanical clock kicked into overdrive with the widespread adoption of artificial lighting. This is what finally killed winter wages. Now, there was no need to take it easy when the days were short. With artificial lighting, capitalists started treating every season like it was harvest season. That's how factory workers got stuck working 12, 14, 16-hour shifts. Not just during the busy season, but all year long. That familiar feeling where you leave work in the winter and it's already dark out? That wasn't a thing until like 1802. That was a thing that was invented by industrial capitalists in order to maximize productivity. The industrial capitalists...
okay, sure, it gave us a bunch of stuff, but it gave us a bunch of stuff that these days we can't even afford, so, like, what's the fucking point? And someone will call me privileged because I'm saying this on a computer, but, like, okay. Yeah, but, like, do I need a computer and a PlayStation and a TV and a fancier bed and a couch and a big kitchen table that I never fucking use? Yo, Chody with the raid. No, I don't. How's everybody doing? We're recording this for YouTube. I hope the stream went good. How was Elden Ring? Got to give you the shout out here, brother. I mean, even though pretty much everybody who was here was already in your stream, but that doesn't matter. Boom. Played Elden Ring. Yeah. Good game. I don't think it's as good as Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3 and Demon Souls, but it's still a damn good game, man. I died and rage quit. That's fair. It's absolutely fair. Sometimes
did
you have
not
to just let
stop
the
with-
rage take over. You know, sometimes you got to be a little dark side.
The tyranny of the mechanical clock, and they did not stop with the 12, 14, or even 16-hour workday. In time, they expanded their reign of terror to target public holidays. Within a matter of decades, public holidays
work,
that had
guys.
existed
This is
for
what we've done
hundreds
to
of years
ourselves.
were systematically suppressed in favor of more
So they got rid of
work.
holidays? So they got rid of those holidays. We were talking about holidays here somewhere around there they are. Easter, Midsummer, and Christmas. So it was like, March and April you wouldn't really work. Late June you wouldn't really work. And then Christmas, yeah. I work 12 hours a day. I'm exhausted and hate to raid and run. Dude, I feel that. Get your sleep, man. Don't you worry about it. Raid and run, it's still a raid. Fuck it. I could have not had the raid. That'd have been worse. That'd have been way worse than having the raid. I appreciate you, Jody. You get some good rest, man. You've earned it.
We talked earlier about the late medieval period, when workers were able to live lives where they had 42%,
though, before you go.
49%,
42%.
51% of
This was medieval peasants. I mean, English were at like 33% until there was a labor shortage, and then they fucking pushed back and got up to 51. But yeah, this is how this is how much of the year people would not work in medieval Europe. This is how much of the year they wouldn't work. But now we're here today where you fucking barely get 30%. That's
days
counting
off.
weekends and holidays.
Only 200 or 300 years later, workers had to learn to survive with only 15% of days off. The industrial capitalists would have taken more if they could, but the church mounted a defense of Sunday as a day
Right.
off. Mostly.
uh-huh.
At
That's
the
a
end
good
of it
thing
all,
that the church can do. I mean, there's not a whole lot of great things the church can do, but they can do some good things.
the lives of workers
careful which
had
ones you
been
trust.
completely transformed. English workers in the 19th century were working 80% more than English workers in the 17th.
Look at that. Hours of work per year. 17th century England, 1440 to 2300, depending. And it varies, and it absolutely can vary. There are busy times, there are good times, there are bad times. I'm not saying that nobody should ever work. My issue comes down to, like, why in the fuck are we working like this for nothing? We're working like this for nothing.
Century. The country
You can't get ahead. I mean, have any of y'all really been able to get ahead? I haven't been able to get ahead. And maybe I'm a loser, that's fine, but, shouldn't your work at least cover the rent and the utilities and the internet bill? Like, shouldn't it just at least cover those?
had never been richer,
You'd
but you would
expect it
never
would.
know it by looking at the workers. Over the century leading up to this, the British GDP had grown by 50%. But over the same period, worker pay was not just stagnant, but in decline. They were
Isn't that familiar? Isn't that familiar?
doing almost
Shit.
double the work for less
How's everybody
pay.
doing?
And the transformation wasn't just in the number of hours worked. Owners
Nuckin,
and
Kerber,
bosses used
Sentinel,
their leverage to force
Darth
their
Regulus,
workers to
Wolfie
live in a
Snout,
tiny
Zimmy,
authoritarian
ADHD
world run
Barbie.
by
I had to read that
capitalists.
twice. That's a funny name. That's a funny ass name, Barbie. Good to see everybody from the raid. Glad y'all are here. Warcraft 3
This
isn't working
shift
for me today,
in the
so
culture of work
we're doing just
has
chatting for a while.
always been fascinating to me, and so I tried to look back to where it first began.
Okay.
When and why did we shift from the more casual and laid-back work culture that came out of medieval Europe to the
Why?
more totalizing and
Tell me, Historia
authoritarian
Civilis,
and
tell me why.
inhuman work culture
Why did we
that
switch?
came out of the Industrial Revolution? I think I've figured out where things started to shift,
Appreciate
and
you,
I
Sandal.
think I've got it pinned down to the exact year. 1664.
Uh-oh, he's got it
In
pinned down to a year,
1664,
huh? Let's
some
see here.
absolutely psychotic capitalist named Richard Palmer, cursed be his name, paid the church in the town of Wokingham, England, to ring their bell at precisely 4 o'clock every morning and at precisely 8 o'clock every evening. He did
Oh. Oh, isn't
did
this
this
something?
because he was still seeing the cultural evidence of winter wages, where workers woke up later.
Aren't these the same people that say they don't want regulation? I think I already said this. Actually, I'm sure I already said this. The same people who tell you they want to deregulate business are the same people who paid. We saw this back here. If y'all weren't here, if y'all weren't paying attention, let me catch you up real quick. As soon as businesses started putting clocks in, they worked with local governments to fine any employees who were even as little as 1 minute late. Now, I'm sure people were more than a minute late, right? Fuck it, in for a penny, in for a pound. If I'm gonna be fined either way, I'm just not gonna show up to work for an hour. You'd be fined as much as an entire day's wage for being even 1 minute late. And it was the business owners who today cry about regulation. It was the business owners that created those regulations in the
During
first
the
place.
slow winter months and worked half as hard as they normally did. As a
It's
capitalist, this drove Palmer crazy. He felt that it was deeply important for workers to be up 4 hours before sunrise every day, even if they didn't really have any work to do. If they didn't want to wake up on their own, he would do it for them. So he had the church bell ring at 4 o'clock every morning, 4 hours before sunrise. He also felt that it was his job to tell people when to go to bed. So he had the church bell ring at 8 o'clock every evening.
Oh my God.
Also, shout out to
Psycho.
this church for straight up abandoning their religious mission and surrendering to this capitalist weirdo. Way to
Yeah.
go, guys. I hope the money was worth it.
Yeah.
According to Richard Palmer and this new breed of 17th century capitalist coming up.
Yes, I know. What the fuck indeed, dude. What the fuck indeed. If you've never heard of this guy, I'm going to give him another shout out before we finish the video here. Historia Civilis. He's got over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. He's a big favorite of mine. I first came across him when he was doing Roman history stuff, which is where the name comes from, Historia Civilis. He does a fantastic description of how the Roman political system worked, how the Roman society worked from the sources that we can tell, and he even does some breakdowns of like old, like the Second Punic War battles, like Trebia River and
with him.
all those.
Private time was an outdated concept. This new generation of capitalists wanted a
Sounds
say
like the stuff
in
they tell
how
us. Sounds like the stuff they tell us today, right? Why would you want to have any time off? What do you mean you can't have 3 jobs? Well, my fucking second job won't work with my schedule that I got from my third job, so my second job's threatening to fire me unless I can show up on time and all this. Well, my first job is already giving me grief about not being able to work more hours, but I can't work more hours there because I got the second and third jobs already. So sounds very similar. Echoes of the past. Time is a flat circle, and I'm really starting to believe that there is no end. I think we go to the big nap and immediately come back.
workers were spending their hours at home. They even wanted to say in what time they went to bed. They had a totalitarian worldview. As far as they were concerned, all time was company time. Inspired by the work of Richard Palmer, this particular form of abuse became a fashionable trend in England. Psychopaths all across the country started co-opting churches and victimizing towns, all in the name of productivity.
Oh well.
20th century Canadian socialist George Woodcock writes of this new breed of capitalist.
Okay.
The new capitalists, in particular, became rabidly time conscious. Time, here symbolizing the labor of workers, was regarded by them almost as if it were the chief raw material of industry. But this newfound obsession with time and productivity didn't stop there. When this new
Yeah. Like, my dad was harassing me about that. He's like, well, get a job and then get a second job. And he's like, you don't have kids. He's like, you just have a cat. The cat will be fine. And he's got a point. But the issue is, you know, when you get that first job, you're only going to get the first job if you tell them you have open availability. Then when you go and get the second job, good luck getting the first job to give you a consistent schedule. I have said that every single place I've worked. I need a consistent schedule. Same days on, same days off, every single week. That lasts for exactly 1 month. Every single time. And then if you want to go grab a second job, good luck. Because when do you work? Well, I don't know. I had to wait till Tuesday when the new schedule comes out, but sometimes the new schedule doesn't come out till Wednesday morning, and the schedule gets posted before I even had a chance to look at it. Then I'm getting calls saying I'm late.
Generation of capitalists left their places of business, they would see their workers getting off work for the day. And what did they see them doing? Standing around in groups, chatting, relaxing on public benches, walking into public houses to grab a meal, or, God help us, a drink. All of this public recreation bothered Palmer and his friends immensely.
Yup, my dad is like this. This is why I call my dad. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a shrink, but I really do think my father is a narcissistic sociopath.
Palmer's obsession with the clock coincided almost exactly
Very
with
similar
the
to how
rise
these
of
people
English
are being-
newspapers. And what did this
The rise of newspapers, the rise of mass media? You mean the same thing they want us to watch instead of the YouTubes and the social medias that are actually people telling other people what they see?
first generation of newspapers
Yeah, better not let
like
the
to
poors
discuss?
talk. They might
They
realize the riches are raping them.
liked to discuss the
I'm gonna have to edit
problem
that out.
of the poor, and specifically the problem of the leisure activities of the poor.
Or is that
The capitalists were very open about this. They said that the only legitimate leisure
course they were.
activities for
Of
the
course they were
poor
open at this.
were mental cultivation or religious study. Basically, studying Latin or studying the Bible. That's what poor people should be allowed to do for fun. Anything other than that, they argued, was corrosive to the culture. For those keeping track at home, bribing the church and turning it into a private tool for the capitalist class, not corrosive to the culture. Relaxing on a public bench after work, corrosive to the culture. These people
Remember when they call you lazy?
were demons.
Yeah.
That's what the capitalists wanted. No life outside of work. No hobbies. No idleness. No relaxation. No days off. Nothing to look forward to. No life. Just work and someone else's profit.
Yep.
'20th century Canadian socialist George Woodcock concedes.
That's what we're on. That's what we're on right now. That's how we are. That's what these people want from us. Because, I mean, you can't get ahead working a job today. You can't. You can't. Right? Even if you do get a better job, boom, inflation. Or boom, something happens. Or, you know, maybe you're making 70 grand and you've never made above 40 grand in your life. Yeah, and then you look around and you're like, wait, what's the poverty line for the area I live in? 90,000. Cool, so I'm still a broke bitch.
That
exactly
mechanical
what I found.
time is valuable as a means of coordination of activities in a highly developed society.
Oh, yeah.
Just
okay. This guy was railing about the clock earlier, and I'm not a socialist, but I do see a lot of where they're coming from. I don't agree with their solution. Oh, well, let's give the government all the power. Yeah, sure, because they've never done anything wrong, ever, right?
as the machine is valuable as a means of reducing unnecessary labor.
Come on,
But,
now.
he
We know that.
argued, the modern use of the mechanical clock did
ain't
not reduce unnecessary labor. It did the opposite.
Exactly.
Hurried meals, the regular
Yup.
morning and evening scramble for trains or buses, the strain of having to work to time schedules.
This is why people drop dead at 50. This is why dudes drop dead, have heart attacks and shit.
All contribute to digestive and nervous disorders, to ruin health and shorten life.
Yep. Because we are replaceable cogs in a machine. I've said it 100 times. I'll say it again. Yes, I repeat myself a lot.
What to make of all this? We are richer as a society than ever before, but somehow we are less free. Workers have lost so much, not just our afternoon naps and our holidays, but our autonomy, our dignity. In short, we work too much.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to leave it there. We're going to, I don't know what the rest, we're not going to do the extra minute and a half here. We're just going to stop there. Historia Civilis, give him a follow on YouTube, guys. He's fan-fucking-tastic. Go ahead and subscribe to his channel. I'll give you a quick rundown. of what we're looking at here. Sort of stuff I've been watching this guy for years, right? Caesar marches on Rome, the Iroquois Confederacy, Caesar crosses the Rubicon, destruction of Thebes. He does a lot of like ancient history stuff. And that's really where he built the channel. And he seems recently like he's kind of run out of important events in the past. So he's started to move more towards modern. Ooh, Battle of Actium, 31 BCE. Ooh, I don't think I've watched that one. We got to watch that one later. Ooh, let me know if y'all want to see that. And yeah. So thank you all. Let me know how you felt about this video down in the comments. If you want to see me live, come by on Twitch, twitch.tv/wordplace. I'll put a link in the description. And let me know if you like this video, if you want to see more stuff like this, want to see more of me complaining, and so on and so forth. Thank you all. See you all again.